I came to warn you to stay away from that handsome young man. I saw both of you earlier, and I assure you right now that whatever you were talking about will not work because he is mine. Leave him alone because he can never be yours. Amma's words were sharp and full of anger. Without waiting to hear what Wara would say, she stormed off. Once upon a time, in a small peaceful village in Rivers State, Nigeria, there lived a young girl named Wara. Wara was known throughout the village for her hardworking nature and cheerful attitude. She was the kind of girl who brought joy wherever she went. Wara's family didn't have much, but they were content with the little they had. Her parents were farmers, and Wara often helped them on the farm or sold their produce in the local market. On this particular day, Wara sat in the bustling market under the shade of an old tree with a large tray of garri, bananas, oranges, and mangoes displayed neatly in front of her. The sun was high in the sky, and the heat made her wish the day would end quickly. As she sat, she thought about her best friend Amma. Wara smiled as her thoughts drifted. Awa was not just a friend, she was like a sister. Wara often thanked the gods for bringing Amma into her life. She believed that finding a true friend was rare, and Amma had proven to be a genuine friend over and over again. I can't wait to finish selling so I can go and see her, Wara thought to herself. Buyers, please come and buy these things quickly so I can go. She was still lost in her thoughts when she felt a light tap on her shoulder. Startled, she turned around, only to see Amma standing there with a big smile on her face. Wara's face lit up with joy. Amma, you are a ghost. I was just thinking about you, and here you are. Were you really thinking about me? Amma asked, laughing as she sat on a small wooden stool beside Wara. Yes, you are my only true friend in this whole village, Wara said. I was praying to the gods to help me sell my things quickly so I could come and see you. Amma smiled and looked around. How is the market today? Have you sold much? Wara sighed. Not really. I only sold a few things. Market has been slow today. Honestly, I came here to avoid going to the farm with my parents, she added with a mischievous grin. Amma burst into laughter. Wara, you're something else. How can you run away from farm work? I, on the other hand, love farming. I can't imagine avoiding it. Wara shook her head. I don't like farming at all. I wish I could leave this village and live in the city where life is easier. They continued chatting and laughing as they sat together. To Wara's surprise, customers began arriving one after the other. In no time, her goods started selling faster than they had all day. Wow, Amma, you are truly blessed. Ever since you sat here, people have been coming to buy, Wara said excitedly. I told you, Amma replied, smiling proudly. As the sun began to set, Wara had sold most of her goods, and she was happy. She and Amma packed up and started walking home. The road back to the village was lively with people returning from their farms and the market. As they walked, they passed a group of young men standing under a palm tree. The men greeted them politely, but their eyes lingered on Wara as she walked by. Did you see her? She's the most beautiful girl in this village, one of the men said. Yes, but she doesn't seem interested in any of us. I wonder if she will end up marrying someone from the city, another replied. Wara and Amma didn't hear the men's words as they continued on their way. When they reached Wara's house, they dropped off the goods and fetched clay pots to go to the stream for water. The stream was not far from the village, and it was surrounded by lush green trees. Birds chirped happily as Wara and Amma walked through the narrow paths leading to the water. Let's fetch enough water to fill all the pots in my house first. Then we will do the same for your house, Wara said. Okay, that's a good idea, Amma agreed. When they arrived at the stream, the water was cool and clear. The girls dipped their pots into the water and were about to lift them when something unexpected happened. A bright light appeared above the water, and a beautiful woman with glowing skin and flowing hair rose from the stream. She looked like no one they had ever seen before. Both Wara and Amma froze in shock. Then, without a word, they dropped their pots and ran as fast as their legs could carry them. Screaming on top of their voices, Wara and Amma ran towards different directions, and they found their way to a bush path that led to their houses. The forest was silent, except for the chirping of birds and the occasional rustling of leaves. The girls were still breathing heavily as they made their way home, their minds filled with fear and confusion about what they had seen. The goddess didn't plan to hurt them. She only came out to have her bath because that was the usual time she normally took her baths. The water from the stream shimmered under the sunlight as she stepped into it, her flowing garments blending with the rippling waves. Coming out and seeing two maidens who were very frightened broke her heart because that wasn't her intention. She sighed deeply, her voice soft like a gentle breeze. I wish they hadn't run away. I am not here to hurt anyone, certainly not the children of my own land, which I'm supposed to protect. The goddess wondered to herself as she quickly took her breath. The cold water refreshed her, but her thoughts were far away. She moved gracefully, making sure not to linger any longer than necessary. She wanted to return to the safety of the river's depth before anyone else saw her and misunderstood her presence. When Amma got to her father's compound, she glanced around nervously. The familiar sight of the small neatly swept yard and the goat resting under a mango tree calmed her a little. Still, her heart was unsettled. She wondered where her friend Wara was and whether she was okay. I hope the river goddess hasn't taken my friend with her to the underworld. May the gods protect her for me. She prayed silently as she opened the door and stepped inside. She was surprised to see her mother sitting on a low stool, sorting through a basket of freshly harvested cassava. Mama, I had no idea you were back, Amma said in surprise. Her mother frowned and looked up. Is that how to greet your mother? Well, that's not even the case here. How come there's no water in this house? Amma's heart sank as she remembered the missing water pot and their unfinished task at the stream. I'm so sorry about that, Mama. The thing is, I was with my friend in the market and we planned to fill our houses with water. We started with our house, but when we got to the stream, something very strange happened. Her mother raised an eyebrow, curiosity flickering in her eyes. What do you mean by that? What happened? Amma swallowed hard. Her voice trembled slightly as she said, We saw the river goddess, Mama. Her mother's face softened and she nodded as though it was not news to her. Oh, that's correct. The goddess usually comes out to have her bait today. She doesn't hurt people. So you maidens shouldn't have run away. She paused, then added with a stern look. That's by the way. You mean to tell me that water is not in this house because you accompanied and sat with your friend while she did her own business? You are so stupid. Now get a water pot and fill this house with water. Amma quickly grabbed another water pot and hurried outside, her mother's angry words echoing in her ears. She felt relieved that her mother hadn't noticed the missing pot yet. Without wasting time, she rushed to Wara's house to check whether she was safe. To her relief, she saw Wara sitting outside her hut, looking as calm as if nothing unusual had happened. Amma let out a breath she didn't realize had been holding. They exchanged quick greetings, and after talking about their experience at the stream, they decided it would be better to fetch water from another stream far from the village. They carried their water pots and set off. The road to the other stream was quiet and lined with tall trees, whose branches formed a canopy above their heads. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating patterns on the ground. The girls walked in silence, each lost in thought about what they had seen. Suddenly, a voice called out, breaking the silence. "Beautiful maiden, excuse me, please." The girls turned around to see a handsome young man standing by the roadside. His clothes were clean, and his smile was warm. Amma thought he was talking to her, so she stepped forward. But the young man shook his head politely. "Not you, please. I want to have a word with your friend," he said, his eyes resting on Wara. Amma's face fell. Her heart tightened with a pang of jealousy. Why is it that she's always the one that men flourish around and not me? Is she more beautiful than I am? She thought bitterly as she watched the young man approach Wara. The two friends stood there, one filled with surprise and the other consumed by envy. "What did he say?" Wara asked. Amma pretending to cheer up. "Don't mind that fool. He was talking about wanting me to be his woman, but I refused. He's not my type." Amma lied to her friend. "My friend, that young man is good looking, and he also appears to be a nice person. The fact that you don't want people doesn't mean you should talk down on them," Wara said as she began to advise Amma on how to behave properly. "Don't mind him, my friend. They appear good until you get to know them. Then you realize they are wolves in sheep's clothing." Amma responded, trying to hide her jealousy. They both headed to the stream, determined to complete the task they had set out for before the handsome young man had interrupted them. That evening, the village was calm, with stars twinkling brightly in the sky. Amma, however, could not find peace. She lay on her mat, staring at the thatched roof of her hut, her thoughts filled with envy. She had rejected so many men before, so why is she even considering this one? Amma thought bitterly. "I will make sure it doesn't happen. I love this man, and I can't afford to lose him to Wara." Amma's mind was restless as she began to plot ways to keep Wara and the young man apart. She whispered to herself, planning lies she could tell and schemes she could create to destroy any chance of the two becoming close. Sleep refused to come to her eyes that night. Meanwhile, Wara slept peacefully, unaware of the storm brewing in her friend's heart. The cool night breeze carried the sweet scent of flowers into her hut, luring her into a deep sleep. She dreamed of the young man, his kind smile, and the gentle way he had spoken to her. Though she had never felt this way about anyone before, she didn't know what to make of it. The following morning, the rooster crowed, signaling the start of a new day. The village slowly came to life as women prepared meals, children ran around, and men gathered for the day's work. Wara woke up feeling refreshed and ready to start the day. She picked up her water pot, intending to fetch Amma so they could go to the stream together. However, as she stepped out of her hut, her father, who was sitting under the big orange tree in their compound, called out to her. "My daughter, please come," Papa Wara said, his voice calm but firm. "Yes, Papa," Wara responded, walking towards him with a curious look on her face. "My dear, I can see you are heading out to call your friend, so you both can go fetch water from the stream. As usual," Papa Wara began, his eyes studying her carefully. "Yes, Papa, you know she's my only best friend in this whole village," Wara replied proudly. Her father sighed deeply and leaned forward. "My dear, I want to warn you to be very careful with that your so-called best friend. I have been observing her for a long time, and I can tell you that she's not as genuine as you think." Wara looked at her father in surprise but kept quiet as he continued. "You children of nowadays are so blind to many things, including recognizing fake friendship when you see it. Always watch your back, my daughter." "Okay, Papa, I will keep that in mind. Thank you for always looking out for me. You are such a great father," Wara said, smiling as she stood up to leave. Carrying her water pot, Wara headed for Amma's hut. The sun was beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the village. Birds chirped happily, and the air was fresh and cool. Wara hummed a tune as she walked, thinking about her father's words. As she approached a narrow path leading to Amma's hut, she suddenly saw the handsome young man from the previous day standing by the side of the road. Her heart skipped a beat, and she felt her cheeks flush. See who the gods finally delivered to me. Good morning, beautiful maiden, the young man greeted, his smile as radiant as the morning sun. Good morning to you too. How may I help you? Wara responded, pretending as if she wasn't interested in whatever it was the young man wanted to say, though her heart was beating fast. I just hope he says something, and I will not hesitate to accept him. Look at how handsome he looks. Oh, I'm so in love with this man. Wara thought to herself, her excitement hidden behind her calm expression. I have been looking at you for a very long time, and I must commend you for your good behavior and virtue. You are my kind of woman, and I will not hesitate to come and see your people once you accept to be my woman. I love you so much, my sunshine, the young man said, his voice filled with sincerity. Oh, may the gods be praised. Did he just refer to me as the sunshine? Wow. Let my legs not betray me right now because I feel every beat of my body vibrate. Wara thought, overwhelmed with joy, but she kept a straight face, looking at the young man as though she wasn't impressed. Please say something, the young man urged her, his eyes full of hope. Well, I don't have anything to tell you yet. Are you from this community? And who is your father? Wara asked, trying to sound mature and composed. My name is Dumle, and I'm the only son of Chief Yiri. We are from this kingdom, my lady. Dumle replied, smiling warmly. He felt hopeful that their conversation was going in the right direction. Okay, we will talk another time because right now I'm going to the stream and I can't afford to face my father's wrath if I waste another minute here talking with you. Wara said, quickly running off before Dumle could see or say anything else. All the while they were talking, Amma had hidden herself behind a bush nearby and overheard everything. Her heart burned with anger as she clenched her fist in frustration. How come they met today? Oh, may the gods forbid that Wara will take this man from me, a man I have fallen deeply in love with. I will not allow this to happen. Amma muttered to herself. She quickly ran off to her father's hut, her mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. Not long after, Wara arrived at Amma's hut. She knocked on the bamboo door, calling out for her friend, but there was no response. Amma, are you home? Wara called, knocking again and again. Inside, Amma peeped through a small hole and saw that it was Wara. She stayed quiet and pretended that no one was home. After knocking several times without any reply, Wara sighed, picked up her water pot, and headed to the stream alone. It was the first time she had gone to the stream without her friend by her side. This is very strange. Where could she have gone? Well, I can't wait to tell her that the man she said she rejected has finally spoken to me, and I am going to accept him, Wara thought, a smile creeping onto her face as she imagined the young man's kind words again. Butterflies filled her stomach, dancing with joy at the thought of Dumle. As Wara returned from the stream with her water pot balanced on her head, she walked along the narrow path leading back to her compound. Suddenly, Amma appeared out of nowhere, standing in her way. Amma, my friend, I came to your hut earlier so we could go to the stream together, but I didn't find you. Are you angry that I went to the stream without you? Please forgive me, Wara said, laughing softly as she tried to lighten the mood. But Amma's face was hard, and she didn't return the smile. I came to warn you to stay away from that handsome young man. I saw both of you earlier, and I assure you right now that whatever you were talking about will not work because he is mine. Leave him alone because he can never be yours. Amma's words were sharp and full of anger. Without waiting to hear what Wara would say, she stormed off, leaving Wara standing in shock. What is wrong with her? Is this the manifestation of what my father warned me about? I think I have to go and see her once I get this water to the house, Wara said to herself as she quickened her pace, eager to make sense of what had just happened. As soon as Wara got to the house, she dropped the water pot and hurriedly left. She didn't let her father, who was busy in the yam barn, see her. Her heart raced as she ran as fast as her legs could carry her. She needed answers and could not wait another moment. In no time, she arrived at Amma's hut and began banging on the bamboo door with urgency. Amma, open this door because I know you are in there. Open up and let's talk. What's wrong with you? Wara called out, her voice filled with frustration and a growing anger. As she stood at the door, waiting for a response, her mind swelled with questions. I thought she said that young man asked her out, but she refused because he isn't her kind of man. Why is she now wanting me to stay away from him? Wara thought aloud, puzzled by the sudden change in Amma's behavior. She was about to knock again when suddenly the door swung open. What are you doing here, you betrayer? Amma screamed, her eyes blazing with anger. Wara stood frozen for a moment, shocked by the accusation. Wait a minute, who did you just refer me to? As a betrayer? How did I betray you? She asked, her voice rising in fury. You betrayed me by snatching my man from me. How dare you come to my father's compound after what you did? Amma fired back, her words sharp like arrows. Your man? I thought you said he asked you out, but you refused. Why are you now angry that I smiled at him? Come to think of it, you only saw us talking and you are this angry. What if you had seen us in bed? So, when you finally get married, nobody will smile at your husband. Talk more of talking with him. You are such a ridiculous fellow, Wara said, her voice steady, but she stepped back to keep her distance. How dare you call me ridiculous? Amma shouted, raising her hand to slap Wara. But Wara was quick and caught her hand midway. Never you try this again, because you are no match for me when it comes to physical combat. By the way, I see that you have been pretending to be my friend all along when truly there is hatred in your heart towards me. You and I cease to be friends from this minute, Wara said firmly, her words cutting like a blade. She turned and walked away, leaving Amma standing at the door, trembling with rage. So she had the guts to say it to my face that I am no match for her when it comes to physical fighting. Right? I would deal with her. Amma vowed to herself, her hand clenched into fists. Meanwhile, Wara's mind was restless as she made her way back home. I wish I knew the house of this young man. I would have asked him if he really professed love for Amma, because this whole thing is not making sense, she thought, her heart heavy with confusion. Just then, she felt a light tap on her shoulder. She turned around and saw Dumle standing there, smiling at her. Thanks be to the gods. I was just thinking about you, Wara said, a wave of relief washing over her. This is so pleasant to my ears right now. So have you gotten an answer from me now? Dumle asked, his smile growing wider. Not yet. I want to ask you, did you profess love for my friend? I mean, the maiden you saw me with the first time we met, Wara asked, needing clarification. No, I called you that day, but she was the one who responded. So I told her it was you I wanted to talk to and not her. Then she got angry. You should be careful with such a friend, though. I have heard wild stories. Dumle cautioned, his tone serious. Yes, I will. Thank you very much. Please, let's see another time, Wara said, her mind finally at ease. She hurried back home, eager to sort her thoughts. But as she took 3 steps away from him, a hot substance splashed on her from nowhere. It burned her skin, and she fell to the ground, her eyes becoming blurry. Who is there? Who did this to me? Wara cried out as she turned towards the bush path where the attack came from. She could no longer see anything, and her heart raced with fear and confusion. Tears streamed down her face as she stumbled along the path, trying to find her way home. Her legs felt weak, and her voice shook as she called out, but no one responded. She was still crying and trying to steady herself when Dumle ran towards her. hearing her cries from a far distance. His heart sank when he saw her distressed state. "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. "Somebody poured this on me, and now I can't see anything," Wara cried bitterly, her hands covering her face. "Look at me. Can't you see me?" Dumle asked, his voice trembling with fear. But when Wara shook her head, tears filled his own eyes. He realized how serious the situation was. "I can't see you. Oh God, who could have done this to me? How can I live with both eyes blind?" Wara wailed, her body shaking as she cried harder. Dudley bent down and carefully carried her on his shoulders, determined to get her home as quickly as possible. When they reached Wara's father's compound, Papa Wara was sitting outside, enjoying the evening breeze. The moment he saw Dumle carrying his daughter, he sprang to his feet, his heart pounding. Something was wrong. He could feel it. "My son, what happened to her?" Papa Wara asked, his voice filled with worry as he rushed towards them. "Good evening, Papa. It looks like your daughter can no longer see. Somebody poured a hot substance on her, and it damaged her eyes immediately," Dumle explained, his voice heavy with sadness as he gently set Wara down. Without waiting for a reply, Dumle hurriedly left, unable to bear the pain of seeing Wara in such a state. Papa Wara knelt beside his daughter, his hands trembling. "My child, who did this to you?" he asked, his voice breaking as he saw the tears streaming down her face. Wara, still crying, tried to explain. "Papa, I went to Amma's place. She has been acting strangely towards me because of a man who told me he liked me. Amma said she didn't want him, but now that she sees him talking to me, she's angry. After I left her place, someone poured this on me from the bush. I didn't see who it was." Papa Wara sighed deeply, his heart aching for his daughter. "It's all right, my child. Let me take you inside so you can eat something," he said gently, trying to comfort her. But Wara shook her head. "How can you say it's all right, Papa? I left this house with both eyes intact, and now I am blind. Oh no, I must not leave. I shouldn't live without eyes. How can I ever become anything in life without my eyes? Leave me alone, Papa. I want to die," Wara cried out, her voice filled with despair. Papa Wara was patient with her. He softly spoke words of encouragement, assuring her that life still go on and that they would find a way to help her. Finally, he managed to guide her inside. She ate a little food and fell asleep, though her sleep was troubled by thought of the darkness that now surrounded her. The next morning, Wara woke up with a heavy heart. She felt the emptiness around her and remembered what had happened. She couldn't just stay at home. She needed answers. She asked a small boy in the village to lead her to the path where she often saw Dumle when going to the stream. The boy agreed and took her there, holding her hand and guiding her carefully along the way. When they reached the spot, Wara heard voices. A man and a woman were talking and laughing not far from where she stood. "Please hide me where they won't see me," Wara whispered to the boy. The boy quickly found a bushy spot and helped her crouch there. She thanked him and told him to go back home. "Thank you very much," she said softly, adjusting herself to make sure she wouldn't be seen. She sat quietly, her ears straining to catch their words. The voices grew clearer. The man and woman were talking about something that seemed important. Wara listened intently, but as their words sank in, her heart began to break. "I thought his love for me was true and genuine. How could he do this to me? Oh God, I don't think I can survive this," Wara whispered to herself, her voice filled with pain. She couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. She let out a loud wail, unable to keep quiet. The man and woman stopped talking immediately, startled by the sound. "Don't you know that it's very bad to eavesdrop on people's conversations?" Dumle asked sharply as he stepped away from the maiden's arms. His tone carried frustration, and his words stung Wara, who remained hidden nearby. "Don't mind her. She has no home training, and that's exactly why bad luck keeps following her everywhere she goes," the maiden said, her voice filled with disdain. Please, my love, let's get out of here, she added, grabbing Dumley's hand and pulling him away from the scene. Wara's heart broke into pieces as she listened, her heart breaking, and her tears flowed uncontrollably. She felt an overwhelming sense of betrayal from Dumley, someone she had trusted and cared about deeply. As they left, Wara lay down on the dusty ground. She didn't care that the spot was unsafe, nor did she mind the insects crawling around her. Her world had collapsed, and she felt like there was nothing left to live for. Through her sobs, she spoke softly to herself, her voice trembling with sorrow. Vet, please come and take me now that I'm away from my parents. No one will stop you, so please come quickly. I can't live like this anymore. Blindness and betrayal are too much for me to bear. She wept bitterly, her cries echoing in the quietness of the surroundings. Her body trembled with pain as she thought about the life she had dreamed of, but now seemed impossible to achieve. If it were only Dumley's betrayal, I could have survived it. I could have moved on somehow. But this blindness, this darkness surrounding me, it's unbearable. I have no strength left, Wara whispered, her voice breaking as she poured out her sorrow to the empty air. Meanwhile, back at home, her parents were in state of panic. Wara had been gone for hours, and there was no sign of her. Her mother, Mama Wara, paced back and forth, unable to hide her fear. Where could she have gone to in this state? Please, my husband, let's go and ask Amma if she knows where our daughter is, Mama Wara suggested desperately. She hoped that Amma, Wara's supposed friend, might have some answers. My dear, our daughter and Amma are not on good terms right now, Papa Wara explained, sitting on their wooden bench outside the house. It seems Amma has been pretending to be a friend, but she's not. Mama Wara looked puzzled. How come she didn't tell me about this? She asked. I noticed something was wrong, so I asked her. That's when she told me, Papa Wara replied. Mama Wara had been at the farm the day Wara lost her sight. When she returned and heard the news, she cried uncontrollably, wondering what had become of her daughter. Now with Wara missing, her fear grew even stronger. As they sat outside trying to figure out their next move, the sound of gunshots shattered the evening air. Mama Wara froze, her heart pounding. What's going on? Where are those gunshots coming from? She asked, her voice trembling. Before they could figure it out, people began running past their house, some carrying their belongings, while others fled barefoot. The scene was chaotic, and the fear on everyone's faces was unmistakable. What's happening? Papa Wara called out to a man who was running by. My brother, it's those cult boys. They are back. And you know what happened the last time they came to this village? No one was spared. The man shouted over his shoulder before disappearing into the distance. Papa Wara's face hardened. He stood tall and straightened his shoulders. I am a man. I can't run because of small boys. What can they do to giants like me? Thank God I have my hunter's gun ready. I will kill them before they kill me, he declared boldly. Mama Wara began to cry. My husband, where do we go from here when our daughter hasn't been found? Please, let's run for our lives first. I'm sure God will protect our child wherever she may be, she pleaded, her voice filled with desperation. But Papa Wara refused to budge. I'm not running anywhere. This is my house, and I will not abandon it. Any cult boy who comes close will know what a giant like me can do, he said firmly, gripping his hunter's gun. As he sat there, Papa Wara decided he couldn't sit back anymore. His daughter Wara was vulnerable and alone somewhere in the chaos, unable to see. Fear gripped him as he imagined her stumbling into danger, injured or worse. He stood abruptly, his resolve firm, and without wasting another moment, he hurried out of the house, calling out her name. The noise of the cult boys rampaging the village made it hard for him to focus, but he pressed on, determined to find her before her. The path was uneven, littered with debris from the destruction caused by the cult gang. Papa Wara moved quickly, his heart pounding with urgency. But in his haste, he didn't see the broken plank with a sharp protruding nail lying in his way. His foot caught on it, and he tripped, falling heavily to the ground. The sharp object pierced his stomach deeply. He gasped, trying to call out, but no sound came. The pain was overwhelming, and within moments, life ebbed out of him. Back at home, Mama Wara was waiting anxiously. The silence that followed the earlier chaos unsettled her, and she began to wonder if it was now safe. She stepped cautiously out of the house, her eyes scanning the compound. To her shock and growing fear, her husband was nowhere to be seen. She called out his name, but there was no response. With growing dread, she decided to venture out to search for both her husband and daughter. As she walked along the path, her heart sank at the sight before her. There, lying lifeless on the ground, was her husband. Blood pooled beneath him, and his face was frozen in an expression of pain. Mama Wara's knees gave way as she fell to the ground in disbelief and horror. Overcome by the sight of her husband's lifeless body, she collapsed. The villagers were still in turmoil. The cult boys, relentless in their pursuit of destruction, continued chasing people through the paths and compounds. In their blind frenzy, they trampled over Mama Wara's collapsed body without even noticing. Her fragile state, already weakened by the shock, could not withstand the impact, and there, in the chaos of the moment, Mama Wara's life slipped away. Meanwhile, Wara lay motionless in the bushes where she had hidden herself earlier. Her blindness rendered her helpless, and the terror in the air left her too frightened to move. She stayed coiled up, silent and still, as the sounds of chaos raged on around her. She had no way of knowing that her parents were no more, and she resigned herself to what thought was an inevitable death. Eventually, the rampage ended, and the village began to quiet down. Survivors cautiously emerged from their hiding places, taking in the destruction and mourning their losses. A villager making his way back into the village stumbled upon Wara lying on the bush path. "Is this not Wara?" he murmured to himself, surprised to find her there. "What could she be doing here, lying down on the ground? Let me help her to her house." The villager gently picked Wara up, and though she felt his touch, she said nothing. Her mind was clouded with fear and despair. She barely registered what was happening as he carried her towards her home. As they approached her compound, the villager noticed a small crowd gathered around. The wailing and cries of the people reached his ears, and his heart sank. Quickening his pace, he entered the compound and immediately saw the lifeless bodies of Wara's parents. The villagers had covered them with clothes, but the grief in the air was unmistakable. "Who are those people crying in my father's compound? And why are they crying?" Wara asked suddenly, her voice breaking through the villagers' thoughts. "My dear, calm down," he said softly, unsure of how to explain the tragedy. "It's nothing serious." But Wara could sense the heaviness in his tone, and her heart began to race. She knew something was wrong. "Papa, Mama," she called out as she instinctively rushed forward, forgetting in her distress that she could no longer see. The crowd fell silent as Wara stumbled, using her walking stick to feel her way around. Her stick hit something soft, and she froze. Dropping to her knees, she reached out with trembling hands, touching the covered body before her. A chilling realization gripped her. Are my parents dead?" she cried out, her voice echoing with anguish. "If I do not get the answer I want right now, I will do something stupid." Wara's cry pierced the heart of everyone present. Some villagers rushed to her side, trying to calm her down. "Take heart, my dear," they said, their voices shaky as they struggled to contain their own emotions. "It is not the end of the world." But no word could ease the pain Wara felt in that moment. She threw herself on the ground, wailing uncontrollably as the reality of her loss sank in. The villagers stood around her, their faces etched with sorrow, mourning not just the loss of Papa and Mama Wara, but also the pain of a young girl who had lost everything. Wara cried her eyes out when they finally told her that her parents were dead. She couldn't believe it. Her heart broke into tiny pieces, and the tears kept pouring like a river. She didn't get to see her parents before they were lowered in the ground because her eyes were blind. The darkness she lived in now felt heavier, like it was swallowing her whole. 1 week after her parents were buried, Wara felt she had nothing to live for. She tried to end her pain by hanging herself, but a young man found her in time and stopped her. Why did you stop me from ending it all? My parents are both dead, and there's no one to take care of me anymore. How can I live? Wara wailed loudly, her voice shaking with grief. Villagers gathered around, whispering words of comfort, but none of their words could fill the emptiness in her heart. As night fell, one by one, the villagers returned to their huts. Soon, only Wara was left. Sitting alone in the darkness, she could hear the quiet sounds of the village at night, crickets chirping, the rustle of leaves in the breeze. But the silence felt louder to her. It pressed down on her, reminding her that she was all alone. She sat there all night, her heart heavy with sorrow. Sleep no longer came to her since her parents' death. When the first cock crowed, signaling dawn, Wara was already awake, her mind lost in the shadows of her thoughts. In the morning, she forced herself to move. She went to the yam barn, where she felt around for some yams. Slowly and clumsily, she roasted the yams and ate them with red oil. Her hands trembled as she ate, and her heart ached with every bite. As she sat eating, she heard the sound of music in the distance. People were laughing and cheering happily. Curious, she asked the people who came to greet her that morning what was happening. My dear, it's Amma. She's getting married today in her father's compound, and she looks so beautiful, one of them said with excitement. Oh, may the gods be praised. Who is the man she's getting married to? Wara asked, though her heart began to beat faster. It's that handsome young man, Dumle, another replied cheerfully. At the mention of Dumle's name, the yam Wara was eating fell from her hand. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. Dumle had been her love, the man who had once promised her forever. But when she went blind, he left her without a word. The people around her were confused by her reaction. They didn't know the history between Wara and Dumle. As they sat there, trying to make sense of her tears, they began to whisper among themselves. Why is she crying because of Amma's wedding? It doesn't make sense, one of them said. Maybe she doesn't want Amma to be happy. That's why good things are far away from her. Another added, their voice full of judgment. Exactly, she must be a bad person. Why else would bad things keep happening to her all at once? Her heart is not pure. That is why life is punishing her. The villagers murmured on, casting their judgment as they left to attend the wedding. Wara, left alone again, felt her heart shatter into even smaller pieces. The weight of her sadness became unbearable. She decided she couldn't live like this anymore. That morning, she tried again to end her life. She thought about her parents, about Dumle, about the villagers who judged her without understanding her pain. She felt she had no reason to keep going. But just as she was about to take the final step, she heard voices. Someone had arrived and stopped her. Who are you people? Wara asked, her voice trembling as she looked around, forgetting that she could no longer see. Who are you people? I can't see, so tell me who you are, Wara said as she looked around. We are missionaries, and we have come to plant a church in this village. As we entered, the Spirit of God instructed us to come here, said a slim woman from the group. Okay, you are welcome to our village. So what can I do for you people? Wara asked. We do not have a place to stay yet, and we are wondering if there is any vacancy for us in your house. Another person said, "May the gods be praised." Wara stopped as one of the missionaries interrupted her. "There are no other gods beside our God, and only He should be praised." The man said firmly, "Oh, that's fine. I will learn about your God then," Wara responded. After the group settled in, Wara led them to her father's yam barn. She instructed them to take 2 giant yams to cook and eat that evening. The missionaries did as she said, and once the food was ready, everyone ate to their satisfaction. That night, they all slept soundly. But in the middle of the night, soft whimpering came from Wara's hut. It sounded like she was crying. What could be wrong with her? One of the missionaries asked, concerned. "I don't know, but let's not disturb her now. At dawn, we will talk to her and find out what is troubling her. I'm sure she will open up to us," another replied. At daybreak, they approached Wara and gently asked her what had made her cry during the night. With a heavy heart, Wara began to tell them the story of her life. How she had lost her parents, how her blindness came suddenly, and how Dumle, the man she loved, had abandoned her. The missionaries listened with deep sympathy. One of them, the leader, said softly, "Oh my God, we had no idea you were going through such pain. Nobody told us you lost your parents on the same day. Please take heart. There is a book we will give you to help you go through this difficult time. Please do not cry anymore." The leader went inside her belongings, searched carefully until she found the book she was looking for, a Bible, neatly placed at the bottom of her bag. The Bible is the perfect book for her right now, the leader said to herself. If she listens to it, she will find healing, not just for her heart, but for her eyes too. She walked outside with the Bible and approached Wara. Hugging her warmly, she said, "I know you cannot see right now, but I promise that after I read this book to you, healing will come to you. Healing in your heart and in your eyes." She began reading the Bible aloud to Wara. The words were soft and soothing, like a gentle stream flowing into Wara's wounded soul. Suddenly, the Spirit of God directed the woman to turn to a chapter about healing. She flipped the pages quickly, and when she found the chapter, she started reading it with faith and power. She had barely read 2 lines from the chapter when something extraordinary happened. "I can see! I can see!" Wara screamed, jumping to her feet. She ran around her father's compound, her joy bubbling over like a river breaking its banks. The missionaries rejoiced with her, praising God for the miracle. Meanwhile, in another part of the village, Amma, Dumle's new wife, was just stepping out of the bathroom. She was tying a towel around her waist when she stopped her toe against a stone and fell. When she got up, she realized something terrible had happened. "My husband! Please come! I cannot see!" Amma cried out in panic, her voice trembling with fear. Dumle rushed to her side. "What happened? Why did you suddenly go blind?" he asked coldly. Despite his words, his heart remained indifferent because he had never truly loved Amma. As they were still trying to understand what was happening, someone ran into their compound with shocking news. Wara's eyes have been restored. She can see again. Dumle froze. He turned to Amma with suspicion written all over his face. "Amma, what is going on here? What happened to you?" Amma began to sob uncontrollably. Finally, under the weight of guilt and shame, she confessed, "It was me. I made Wara blind, and I used black magic on you so that you would forget about her and marry me." Her word caused an uproar. Villagers who had gathered after hearing the commotion shouted in shock and disbelief. "You did what?" they cried out. Amma explained how jealousy and envy had driven her to harm Wara. She had wanted Dumle for herself and believed that blinding Wara would secure her happiness. For a month after her confession, Amma lived in shame and despair. Dumle, disgusted by her actions and realizing his mistakes, left her and returned to Wara. He begged Wara for forgiveness, promising to love and cherish her for the rest of his life. Wara, who had found peace through her newfound faith, forgave Dumle without hesitation. Amma, unable to bear the shame and the reality of her blindness, took her own life by drinking poison. The village mourned her tragic end, but also reflected on the dangers of envy and hatred. Wara, now healed both physically and emotionally, started a new chapter of her life with Dumle by her side. She embraced the future with hope, knowing that the light within her was stronger than any darkness she had ever faced. The most important lesson from this story is that envy and jealousy are dangerous emotions that can lead to irreversible harm. When we allow these feelings to take root in our hearts, they cloud our judgment and push us to make decisions we may later regret. In real life, many people compare themselves to others and let resentment build, leading to actions driven by anger and insecurity. Such action can destroy relationships, ruin lives, and leave lasting consequences, not just for the victim, but also for the person harboring envy. This story teaches us to be content with what we have and to focus on our own growth instead of comparing ourselves to others. It is also a reminder that shortcuts to happiness, like using deceit or manipulation, often backfire. When we harm others to satisfy our desires, the truth has a way of coming to light, and the guilt or consequences can be unbearable. We must be careful of our thoughts and emotions, recognizing when envy or jealousy begin to creep in. Instead of acting on these feelings, it is healthier to celebrate others' success, seek inspiration from them, and work on improving ourselves. True fulfillment comes from self-acceptance, kindness, and living with integrity. And with that, my dear friends, our story comes to a close. But remember, the magic of storytelling lives on, waiting to whisk us away on new adventures, where the wonders of imagination know no bounds. Goodbye for now, and may your dreams be filled with joy, wonder, and endless possibility. Thank you so much for watching. Please kindly comment, like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting stories.